No. And it is recording.
I can see that it's recording in the upper left-hand corner? Left-hand
Yes.
corner. Okay. All right, so we're discussing still Street Love, right? It's our book of choice. And we agreed to come to the table with one quote, a couple of questions, and then maybe potentially a teaching strategy that we could share with each other so that we could do something potentially with this text.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, does anybody want to go ahead then and start us off? Maybe we could start with quotes, passages that we thought were kind of interesting or that maybe we just want to talk about just for fun.
I got one.
Go for it.
So on page 39, we get Junice's perspective. And she's kind of thinking about Damien, who he is, if she likes him, all that, because he's flirting with her. And she doesn't really think she likes him. And the passage that starts with Damien appears sweet as boys go and offers an untested heart. And it carries on for a little bit. Later it says, but I am not that girl. I am street. My needs are fierce. And she carries on more. And there's just a lot of like really great language in that passage. And when I was reading through, I kept thinking of all the different really cool sentences I could pull out for like to show students. There's just a lot of really cool examples of voice, descriptions, self-questioning, and considering like one's own needs. It's a really deep, really cool passage, and it kind of is just like nice to read too. Mm-hmm. So I just thought of a lot of different like questions or engagements I could ask of students around that passage.
That's a really cool passage, Jim. If like I'm just looking at it here, and I noticed specifically like some of the language later in that section. I am street, she says. My needs are fierce. I'm hungry and my teeth are sharp. She talks about like what can he bring to a vacant lot of my horizons, and whatever he brings, will it be street enough to keep us safe against the storm? And what I think is really cool about that too, that, you know, if you're thinking about like just the language and the structure in general, is you really have something to talk about there. Like, what is she really saying? And when she says something like, what can he bring to the vacant lot of my horizons? Like she's asking a question, but really like, what is that question specifically? And then she says, will it be street enough to keep us safe against the storm? Which kind of speaks to the fact that she is very much not like our main character here. She's not like Damien. Mm-hmm. What do you guys think?
I think she repeats that the I am street many times, and in the pages coming up after she talks to her mom as well in prison, she constantly repeats I am street, and I think she's identifying herself as a street girl. But more than that, she's, like Jim said, Junice doesn't seem to like him. I have to kind of disagree with that. I think she doesn't, it's not really about liking him or not. She's just very, like the way she identifies herself, she doesn't seem like good enough for Damien. And that's why she keeps repeating, like, I am street. What's he going to bring to me? How am I going to affect this relationship? So I think it's all about identification. And she's very, I don't want to say self-conscious, but she doesn't believe she's good enough for him.
Yeah. I don't know if I would take it where she doesn't think she's good enough for him. I like kind of the contrast. You know, we talk about pairing this with R&J and how, you know, Romeo and Juliet, they want to be together despite like the labels of their family. And I think this is kind of different from that, in that it's like, because of, you know, she's saying that she is street, she doesn't want to like be in love. She doesn't want that. It's kind of like a fun twist, I think.
I like how when she goes to prison, she immediately tells her mom, like, "Oh, I have a new boy. His name is Damien." And the way her mom reacts shows you exactly what she was afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
And that connects back to the RNJ, like you were saying, the whole family ties and stuff like that. So,
do you know what page that's on?
let me see. I'll try to find that out if someone wants to.
Are we talking about when she actually visits her mother in prison?
Yeah.
Go to the school office. This is where, so maybe another point of discussion as we kind of look through this text, and something that I found incredibly helpful and valuable is the headings. So as we're looking through this, it's almost like every single heading to me as I was reading it gave me more or less a quick 2 or 3 word summary of what was coming within the poem or within the section to come. And really it is poetic verse. And that's one of the things that I kind of struggled with as a reader with this, and probably one of the reasons, like as an adult, I would put this book down, and I think students might put this book down because if they're not understanding that the headings are so heavily linked to the actual text itself, then it can be difficult to look back in the book like this.
Even after I found that out, there's a couple of chapters that I'm going to ask you guys about in a little bit, but I still don't understand who is speaking. And that kind of trips me up with making meaning.
Sorry about that. I lost my internet for a second.
Yeah, and we talked about, even though like this book is super short, it's really kind of difficult. In class the other day, we talked about how a lot of it is written in iambic pentameter, which like to us like geeky English people, it's awesome, but to a kid, that's like a little bit more difficult.
Right.
So even though it seems like an easy read, there's a lot of meaning packed in these tiny words that Jonas is saying and Damien is saying. I found the pages. They're pages 77 through 81. And that's the passage where she's talking to her mom. So before she actually goes into the cell, she's saying, "What will I say to her? Hello, mother." So she has to think about it. And then later on, when she's talking to her mom is basically patronizing her, like telling her, "Have you talked to anyone to help me?" And then she says, the mom starts saying, "You don't care about your mother. I hate you. I hate everything. I hate him." When she tells him about Damien. So I really connected with this chapter just because of the whole family issues going on. And how she's trying to show her love to her mom, but her mom isn't really showing that back to her. And she's expecting, I guess, I don't know, what do you guys think? Is she expecting more from her mom when she goes to visit her?
I think yes. I mean, the simple answer is yes. If you look just before that, actually the quote I pulled, which is so crazy that this is all so connected right now, is like page 50, 49, 50, where she's talking to her sister. And what she's really doing is she's telling her sister within that section, don't talk about our mom that way. Like it says she left, call her mama. She left, that's all I have to say. So she's like going over this, hashing this out with her sister, basically telling her sister that we need to be strong for each other. We need to be connected, that you shouldn't feel that way. So I really do think that she certainly expects more from her mother, especially as we look forward in the text where you are, Samaha, because earlier in the text, she's the one that's really defending her mom and saying that we need to have a better relationship with her. We need her in our lives.
Yeah, maybe she's like kind of cultivating more of like an emotional intelligence towards the situation. I don't know. I think the whole situation would be like really difficult for a teen to like empathetically grasp, even if they are like going through a situation similar to this. But kind of like, she wants her mom to be like the mom. She wants her to know about Damien.
It certainly brings up the question, like, does she expect more from her mother potentially than what her mother's even capable of giving? Or does she expect her sister to feel something for the mother that's not authentic in a way? Especially after we learn that the mom is very much kind of cold and a little bit distant, and certainly attacks her for talking about Damien and for mentioning him.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Does anybody else have like a passage that they want to bring up?
Let's hear another quote.
Let's see.
One thing, actually, we were talking about earlier. Trevor, you mentioned it's like tricky to read, and it a lot of people might want to put it down quickly. And I think that's pretty valid. This is definitely not for everybody, but I also think it's the kind of text that would really benefit from read alouds.
Yeah.
So I feel like hearing each other's quotes out loud like really well. I feel like that's like the best way to really like enjoy this really cool free verse we have. Because I actually super enjoy the style, but I know I'm rare. But I think the coolest thing about it is all of the valuable elements that students can learn from.
Yeah. I think you would just have to front load a lot.
That's true.
Like a lot. Like I don't like it would just be so hard, I think, to put this in a book club because, you would have to have that individual attention with whoever's reading this.
So
I think
go ahead,
sorry. I think one of the strategies of teaching this is to introduce voice in writing and also perspectives in writing. And those are like main strategies for writing and for reading. And if you were teaching this novel, or if you were going to have this novel in a book club, I think those two lessons are very important.
That's true. That's a good point.
I agree. I definitely think you're right. You certainly could use this to teach voice. The one thing that maybe concerns me about this text, and I'm curious to know what y'all have to say about this, is that really this is kind of a text that's targeted toward maybe like middle school. 9th grade is when we're reading Romeo and Juliet. 8th grade is when we're reading Romeo and Juliet. And this text to me speaks volumes to the fact that we're asking those kids to do something that maybe is very, very, very much beyond some of their ability levels. I look at a text like this, and Mallory, you mentioned, I think earlier, that it is short, right? So it's kind of a little teeny tiny small thing, and students can generally be drawn to that, and the headings become difficult. But really what I see that you could get into heavily with this text is that you could really look at the language itself, how the language is structured, and how the language conveys meaning. And maybe I'm looking at it this way because that's what I teach. Like I teach AP language, and that's what we do. But I view certain words, certain phrases, certain little passages, just minor elements within each poem that convey so much meaning and just a very few words. And I wonder what struggles a young student like a 9th grader or even an 8th grader would face if we were to put something in front of them, like the quote maybe we mentioned earlier. I think, Jim, you brought it up on 39, right? Was it?
Yeah.
And in that, like I brought up earlier, the question of what can he bring to a vacant lot of my horizons, and whatever he brings, will it be street enough to keep us safe? Like having a 9th grader grapple with what that actually means. Are we talking about like, what is he going to bring to the vacant lot next to my house? Or are we actually talking about what is it that this guy can bring to the table that he can offer me in my future, that he can provide? And if he's going to provide for me, will it be what I need to survive within the confines of the society that I live in and that I'm a part of. And I just think that that is some dense stuff for somebody who's in the 8th grade.
Yeah.
Like, what do you guys think about something like that? When I think teaching strategies, if I were given this to an 8th grader, my go-to was like brief summaries of each passage, like 2 and 3 liners. After you read it, just give me the quick journal entry summary of what happened, because I think they need that sort of driving force in this to really get it.
Yeah.
I think the coolest thing would be the sticky note strategy too. If you could just put sticky notes wherever and have questions or notes or ideas or thoughts, connections maybe. The thing is too, we have to remember, or we have to remind the kids while they're reading this, that this is a 16-year-old girl. And so what she's going through is relatable to some people, but it also makes the students thankful for, the good life that they're leading and not the kind of life that the main character is leading.
Yeah. And it's like, what a teenager. I mean, like, I just know personally, I didn't think about this in high school, is thinking about like relationships in terms of like what's it going to contribute to your future.
Yeah.
Like, that's like really heavy. Like, that's what I think like 25-year-olds think about. Like,
And
this person have a good paying job.
I just wanted to direct you guys to page 72. There's someone talking in this, I guess, chapter or section, but I don't know who it is, and it's switching.
What page did you say? I'm sorry.
Page 72. So I'm going to read the first stanza and then the last two. Hey, girl, you were in bed and we did have a talk, or don't you remember, little sweetheart? And it says, Junice, that boy has got all up inside your head. You're going to be in love tonight, big time. And then away, back to your bed, you're talking like a child. It's Junice I have to handle, not him. Who's speaking in this one?
I think it goes Junice, Melissa, Junice, Melissa, Junice. But nope, it's not.
Not only does she have to worry about how this boy is going to affect her life, but she has to worry how it's going to affect Melissa's life as well, her younger sister.
That's a really cool observation, that she's, and maybe that's something we're thinking about too in context of who we're teaching this to. If, not all students have this perfect upbringing, and maybe younger students specifically who go through situations, experiences like the characters within this text, maybe that's kind of like the target audience for this, because those are the ones specifically that might read this, and they're the ones that might think about their future a little bit more, because for them it's a concept of survival rather than just what's happening tomorrow or the next day. It's how do I get through life, and that's very much these characters within this text. How do we get through life? For that particular passage, Mallory, I think you were close. I kind of think that this is a conversation between Junice and Melissa as well.
Yeah, I going back through, I did get stumped when I said that. I thought that I was wrong. When she says it's Junice I have to handle, I think she is talking about herself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming it's going Junice.
I think so. That's when I reread it. It seemed like the order was Junice, Melissa, and it ends with Junice saying, "Away back to your bed," and all that.
Yeah.
But why does she say it's Junice I have to handle, not him?
I think it's just like she's talking about
sometimes
herself.
I speak in third person.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I gotta worry about Mallory.
It's free verse, It's a little wacky, and I think she's got a little swagger and a little style, and I don't know, like the kind of people that have like that like fierceness that Junice has or wants to have. They're like prone to saying things like their own names and reference to themselves. It's Junice I have to handle, not him. Wasting my time. I don't need that guy.
Than saying it's me. I've got to handle myself first. I got to take care of myself first, and then him. And maybe that's kind of what she's saying.
Yeah, her name has power. Remember, she is street. You have to take her seriously.
Nice connection.
She's a cool character. I like her a lot.
Yeah. So who's your favorite characters then? Well, Jim's favorite character is Junus, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I would have to
Her and
agree.
Kevin. But I have questions about Kevin.
Kevin.
I don't know. I don't really know that I could label something like that. And that's kind of, that ties in actually to one of the questions that I had was, Romeo and Juliet, those characters, like, they annoy me. Like, as an adult, like, Romeo and Juliet legitimately annoy me. And I think it's because they're just so into their own emotions. Like, you get to the end, and as an adult, you look at that and go, oh my God, adolescence is so dramatic. They're so dramatic about everything.
Really dead.
And then I get into this, and I go, okay, they're equally as dramatic, but at the same time, Junus kind of has like a reason for being the way that she is. So like this maybe is a little bit more palpable, I guess you could say. But at the same time, she still kind of annoyed me because in one of the passages I brought up earlier, she's talking to her sister about, you need to give her a break. She's still our mom. And she's trying to convey that idea. But at the end of the passage, she's like, but we need to be strong, independent Black women. And I'm going, okay, well, which is it? Do you need to be strong and independent? Sort of fall back on our mother because you're telling your sister to do that, but you're also saying to be strong. So she's super all over the place to me.
Yeah. But I mean, I feel like that's kind of true to adolescence.
Yeah. She's a 16-year-old, right?
Right.
Like,
we can't expect
I fluctuate between like my family roles.
I actually, it's so funny because I think it's like hilarious just how diverse her opinions are and like how crazy all her thoughts seem to be. Because she seems like such like a real kid, just being absurd and having crazy thoughts. Like it's clearly like I don't know. I think it's like a funny, interesting, like poetic representation of like all the different things a kid's gonna think in a day.
And I think it's interesting how he portrays adults in here. Like, someone who irks me is freaking Rachel Davis from the Department of Family Services.
Oh my goodness. Where was that again?
Where was that? 52.
The adults do kind of stink.
Rachel Davis, but I could get it, like, how a teen would read it, I think. Like, I don't know. I just felt like Rachel Davis thought she knew everything.
She's a worker, right, of the Department of Family Services?
Yeah, she's like handling their case, I think.
Are they supposed to be,
Miss Ruby needs custody?
Are they supposed to be giving like biased judgments? Because that's what she does in her case review.
I mean, I think that's what happens.
That's definitely what happens. So what she does, or what I gleaned from that chapter, I had a note written there, is that she's basically the one that's sort of trying to take control of a situation that she truly doesn't understand. And I think maybe that speaks to like an adolescent issue too, is adults taking control when maybe the adolescents know more than what the adults do.
Yeah. It's definitely a tricky situation because like you don't want a 16-year-old feeling like they have to be like head of a family and like keep a family together.
Yeah.
But also, like, do you want to take them from that family? Like, especially if they like by choice are like wanting to be there. It's just like a really big gray area that I think that, a lot of kids would relate to if they could just like access this text.
Definitely, depending on the school that you are teaching in, that is certainly, I think, something that would resonate with certain populations, maybe more so than others.
Mm-hmm.
So for something like this, when we're thinking about who we could potentially teach something like this to, or book club, or whatever you did with it, maybe even more so than grade level, we should look at like actual audience, like who is our audience, getting to know your students and saying, okay, do I have kids that are a part of the system? Because if they are, and they live in, say, like a rural area or an inner city urban area that's, experiencing some kind of turmoil, then maybe this would be a little bit more applicable. Maybe if they've dealt with a social worker that was like the ever obnoxious Rachel Davis, that they might be able to relate to that more.
Right.
You know, maybe Janice working through her own issues might help them work through their own issues.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I'm interested to see how it's going to end.
I have a quick question. Did you guys read page 92 or not yet?
No.
Let me look ahead. I know I stopped right around there because that's where we
90.
said that we were going to left off.
Okay, then I'll save that for the next discussion.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm sorry. I can read it right now, and you can just go ahead and talk about it. I'll listen to it.
I mean, we could just like read it real quick. You know,
Okay.
Yeah, let's read it out loud. Why
The
not?
last 3 lines. It's just the last 3 lines of page 92. It says, "Is street the same as hero? Is hero the same as man? Is man the same as Damien?" And I think this is Damien that's talking. And it was interesting because then I flipped back to page 2, which is at the very beginning of the book. And the chapter or the section is titled "The Hero." So does the meaning of hero change throughout the book?
That's an
Maybe-
interesting observation.
Maybe he's trying to figure out how to define what a hero is. Because he thinks he wants to be one so far, but he doesn't necessarily know what it takes.
Yeah.
You know?
He's going through his own like personal fable. And trying to
He's
figure
got the best bud to help him along, you know, to
I
make him.
hate Kevin.
He's got Sledge, the bad guy, you know, that nobody likes, the bully, you know, that he gets to be the good guy to save everybody from.
Of course.
He definitely fits the archetype of the wannabe hero, at least.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think, you know, you could definitely tie this novel in on a unit on like hero or the hero's journey.
That's true. Especially if you just only pull excerpts.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking when we were talking earlier about how you might not want to go through the whole thing. Well, I think you're right. Don't go through the whole thing. Let's just pull excerpts and like fit it to anything, because you're right. There's the hero. There's like just really cool descriptive voice. There's really cool elements of like poetry. You could use like, I remember Dr. Steislinger just read this aloud over the summer. It was one of the first books, I think, and it was so cool the way it sounded out loud, you know. So maybe even just like every now and then like a Friday read aloud that like they just get to enjoy, and it's like it's an accent to a text they're already reading, but it's only tied in like a more personal way to help them like better digest the themes.
Yeah, I was definitely thinking of just excerpts as well.
Also with that, you can tie in how when it's Kevin and Damien speaking to each other, it's always in rhyme, but then the rest of the chapters are free verse, which was really interesting because I'm still trying to figure out why is it written that way.
Well,
go ahead.
Sorry, keep going.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
So that's a good point, actually. But I think Damien and Sledge have a rap battle, right? On page... No, never mind. You're right. They don't rhyme at each other. I thought they did.
What is it?
I was so convinced that Damien and Sledge had a rap battle on like page 4 or 5.
Page 5 is when they're when they're talking to each other.
That's when they really confront, yeah.
We have 10 minutes left of this, just so everyone knows.
Okay. 10 minutes left of recording or 10
Of
minutes?
like this video conference.
So we've been recording for 30 minutes.
Or yeah.
Okay.
Jim, you were right on page 4 and 5. They do have a rap battle because he says, "Day your rap is weaker than your play," and then they start, you know, "Yo,
There
Damien."
you go, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, your mouth is shining, your lips are pounding. Yeah, okay.
And then I guess then he just has rap battles with his buddies because then Kevin and Damien continue on page 7 with rapping.
I think
Isn't
it's just,
everything kind of, sorry, Mallory,
oh,
isn't
go ahead.
everything kind of supposed to be read like that though? Like, isn't that a part of the whole like tone? I mean, when I'm reading the free verse, I'm not jaunting through it like I would normally through like, you know, free verse of whomever, but I like this, all of it sort of has like a flow and sort of like a swing to it. And I'm doing that with my head. I see myself on camera. This is terrible. You know what I mean? Like it all has sort of that like kind of push through and it kind of lilts you along and all of it. It's not just in the rhyming and the rapping pieces, but even the free verse has like a certain flow to it.
Mm-hmm.
Or am
Yeah,
I?
I definitely agree. And I think I just like in conditioned to read free verse like that a lot, just to like try to have like those mic drop moments of like really profound lines. But
Yeah,
I mean, I
they're
think it's definitely there, but I find myself looking for it more in free verse.
Yeah. I caught myself stopping many times. I was like, wow, that was a very powerful line. And it's mostly Junus's lines, not
Right.
Kevin's.
But going back to what Jim was talking about, my interpretation of the rhyming between Kevin and Damien is just to show like how good of friends they are, like to where they can play off of each other's language like that. And I don't think there is that same connection between anyone else in the book.
That's a really cool observation. It almost becomes, again, this is like language and structure, and I love this kind of stuff. It speaks to the fact that we can see their relationship mirrored within the writing.
Mm-hmm.
So the complexity of the writing and how well, like you just said, they play off of each other could maybe imply more about their friendship, and then that speaks to a component of characterization. What do we know about these characters based on the way that the language and the story's written together? That's kind of like a really neat observation.
Yeah. So we have about 7 minutes left. Is there like any closing thoughts that we want to tease out before we're booted out?
I have one quick thing that I did really want to share before we go. So Mallory and I were both in a technology class this summer, and one of the things one of the other students, Elizabeth Clark, actually found was Panzu, which is like an online journal, and it allows students to send a journal directly to the teacher, so that only it's like a sort of like a private thing, and it's sort of like just an online, like they could use their Chromebooks if they're a one-to-one school. They could do it at home if it's like a flipped classroom type of thing. There's a lot of flexibility there with it as like an assignment. I think it's a good formative assessment, in that if you just ask them to meet a certain requirement, like we use an excerpt from a text to learn about meter, and then you could ask them to, in some way in their personal response, reflect some skill, like a mentor sentence, in their own like journal writing. So I thought in the event that this was taught, that would be a really useful and practical tool to both assess the students and let them get practice writing and reflecting on the reading.
Definitely.
Jim, I think that would be really cool, especially if you were in sort of an online setting, kind of like this conference. I mean, you could essentially, if you had to meet with your students like this via Skype or Zoom or whatever, you could incorporate like digital journaling, and students, if they chose to, you could even do like share outs, because we have these share screens, and they could do share outs of their journal entries if they wanted to. Like that would be a really cool resource, especially if you were in a digital platform like this.
I didn't think of the group conferencing in connection to that. That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm. And then going through, just kind of teasing this out with digital classrooms, someone brought up Pear Deck, which is a really fun website, which is basically like you can share a interactive PowerPoint with your students, so they, from their device, can answer questions, and you can use that for formative assessment as well as you're going through teaching them about concepts that you're working through.
Really cool idea too. I wonder how something like that would also work if you're in, so many schools now are shifting like one-to-one. And I wonder how you could implement something like that and almost to a degree like this, what we're doing now in sort of a one-to-one school. I mean, could you still do some kind of Zoom conferencing even in a one-to-one setting?
I think you probably could, having like book club meetings out of class. It would just be a little bit more difficult. But I was just at RNE, which is one-to-one, and they were using stuff, similar to this, not the video conference, but they were using Pear Deck, and they were using interactive like journals online, and they would have like current event blogs going on.
That's so cool.
All really cool.
So, any other final thoughts that we have? Questions, comments, questions about the text, because it can be quite dense at times, or anything that we need to clarify in our last couple of minutes?
I have one question, and if it doesn't make sense to anyone else, then we can drop it and move on to something else. But on page 40, I have no idea what happened. I literally have no clue what this chapter is about.
Oh, yeah.
I worry at the worst, and I remember that it's not Shakespeare, so that the worst is not necessarily what you should expect. At the same time, her mother, Junius's mother, is in prison, so any level of creepiness or bad could be happening to this character. It's so vague. I have no idea.
Well, go ahead if somebody has a better explanation, because I don't know that mine's all that good.
Are you asking about what this section, why it's important?
I don't know. I don't understand what's happening.
Okay, so this is just, Melissa's the baby sister, so this is just one of the
Right.
dreams that she had, and she's describing the dream. And I feel like this dream...
It's a real dream sequence?
Yeah.
I thought it was a dream, but I thought it was foreshadowing.
Okay, all right.
Then I feel like it has a deeper meaning because she's saying that no one else saw her in the dress that she wanted to be in, which was the red dress. And everyone thought she looked so pretty in the blue-green dress. So the only person that's really paying attention to her or that really knows her is Junius.
We have less than a minute. It's flashing on my screen.
Oh, yeah, we do. So I guess we can just go back through
Thanks
this.
for that, guys.
Go ahead and end let's go ahead and end the recording. I mean, we don't need to log out just yet.
Okay.
Hash through a couple ideas, and then we'll be done.